So if we were going to do a text-only analysis for The Old Man at the Bridge, I like the symbolism. The story in and of itself is going to be a symbol, right? Well, the old man is a symbol of the human condition, being caught between the past and the future, unable to move forward. His belongings, what he had to leave behind. He can't bring his cat or his goats. We can also say, wait, if I was to go, and then the animals and their symbolic meaning, we can even give the animals maybe slightly different symbolic meaning. Well, the cat we can. So, characterization. For the old man, we could say the old man can be characterized as innocent and helpless. We could say feeble. Now, we could say he lived his life meagerly, and we could say meagerly because the animals he was keeping were not livestock, so he was generous in his life. That would be our characterization and our textual evidence. All right, going back to the symbolism then. The animals we definitely want to use. Okay, so the foreshadowing, obviously, all the times that he couldn't get up, the old man's condition and inevitable demise is foreshadowed throughout the text when he is portrayed as Dusty. Wait, we could say, I was watching him. We could find one where it was my business. The old man was still there. He did not look like a shepherd. I was watching. Let's see. When he said it was not a good place to stop, he looked at me very blankly and tiredly. We could say when he's portrayed as having a blank and tired expression. That is paraphrased, so I'm not going to quote it. All right, and then the motifs. The animals. The old man's animals are a motif in the story that characterize him as kind and innocent. We could say it also builds themes of leaving, relocation, wars hurting civilians. The irony, you could say it's ironic that he doesn't believe in politics, and yet politics is causing him to uproot his home. So that is irony. It's kind of annoying. Um, Somebody might say, like, it's not ironic because if you don't believe in politics, this is what could happen to you. I guess you could say that. And then you could say it would be ironic um, that it's Easter. You could say this. It is ironic that the forced location of the civilians is happening during the Easter holiday. Um, this information is saved until the end of the story to create more surprise for the reader. You could also say that's what creates the irony. If they would have told us in the beginning, it wouldn't have been as ironic that all the sad stuff was happening on Easter. All right, so now if we go down to this, and you can complete this, obviously, copy it and keep it for any story you do. Remember, Ernest Hemingway, not a big user of figurative language. Exposition, that's where we're going to meet him. Wait, the climax, the old man attempts to get up and falls back down. The old man starts to have a conversation to himself, and the narrator realizes that he will not leave the area. And then the Hemingway informs the reader that it is Easter. All right, wait. There was nothing to do. Fascists were it was Easter and the fascists were advancing to the area. We could say the narrator informs the reader. All right. And then, okay, so down here, I've started. So you're going to identify a central idea. And then you are going to analyze how the author's use of one writing strategy. And that writing strategy will be symbolism. And all of the central ideas that we can put here, let's see. All right, so remember, if you're writing a text-only analysis, your audience has already read the story. So here could be some brainstorms. Ernest Hemingway's story shows readers how domestic animals were the unknown victims of wartime situations. They definitely were. The Old Man at the Bridge shows readers how the elderly are a useless population in any society. That one would be a controversial one. You could maybe change it. You could say, if you were trying to start an argument, useless, helpless. I might even say helpless here. Or a helpless population in any society. Who you could even add to it, who are in need of protection. A central idea seen in the story is that elderly are a burden to society and hold no significant use for the young people. Hemingway builds a central idea through the use of conflict. The story's protagonist tries to get the old man to move off bridge and get to a safer location with the other displaced peasants. That would be the conflict. All right, the central idea of the story is the sacrifices must be made during times of war. Hemingway builds a central idea through the theme of the importance of sacrifices. The old man had to leave behind his animals in order to help himself. Thus, animals were sacrificed. That would be a theme here. Wait, so you could put that into theme. The theme of sometimes sacrifices have to be made for human life. You could definitely argue that here. You could say the story shows how animal lives must sometimes be sacrificed for human safety and survival. That could be a theme here. All right, so now for your introduction, what we will do, I want that to be like that. All right, we will summarize just a wee bit of our story here. All right, wait, so we'll go down. I have in Ernest Hemingway's short story, The Old Man at the Bridge, the symbolism is subtle yet profound. I might put change. The story centers around an old man who refuses to leave his position on the bridge even as the enemy approaches. The old man symbolizes a human condition of being caught between the past and the future, unable to move forward due to fear or uncertainty. The bridge itself represents a threshold or a point of transition, highlighting the old man's struggle to cross over into a new phase of life. All right, so for this, we can change this. I might say in our short story, we could say here symbolism is used to show how change is necessary for survival. The story centers around an old man. All right, then we'll say the old man symbolizes the human condition of being caught between the past and the future, unable to move forward due to fear. We can say here fear, uncertainty, or physical constraints. And then we would have the bridge represents a threshold or a point of transition, highlighting the old man's struggle to cross over into his new phase of life. I might move this one to another area. Wait. All right, so this would be our intro. Now, remember, we're not going to talk about the Spanish Civil War, and we're not going to even really mention the dates. We are just being very general here, because this would be our text-only analysis. All right, so in Ernest Hemingway's short story, The Old Man at the Bridge, his symbolism is used to show how change is necessary for survival. The story centers around the old man who refuses to leave his position on a bridge even as the enemy approaches. The old man symbolizes the human condition of being caught between the past and the future, unable to move forward fear, uncertainty, physical restraint. The story's protagonists symbolize the people in the society who are able to help themselves and attempt to assist those they can. Hemingway uses many symbols to show readers that war and forced displacement can be detrimental to civilians in society. And if I was going to talk about the animals, so both the old man and the protagonist narrator are can be viewed as symbols in the story. The old man mentions to the narrator that he cared for animals before he was forced to leave his home. The said animals included 2 doves, a cat, and a goat. So now wait. He's saying there were 2 goats, a cat. Wait, 4 pairs of pigeons. Wait, he calls it a pigeon here, okay? And then he's saying, you think so? Did you leave the dove cage unlocked? So we should note that at first they're referred to as doves or pigeons. And then they're referred to, but well, technically that would be their cage, right? He's talking about their cage here, but still, we can note this here. They're called pigeons at first. Introduced as pigeons. Wait, so we could say said animals included 2 pigeons or 2 pairs of pigeons, a cat, and a goat. So now we can say the cat, or throughout history, well, really, everybody knows that cats have 9 lives. Cats had like a symbol of royalty. So you could also, if you knew they symbolized royalty, you could talk about how they were like the elites in society that were always going to be okay. But you could say cats are symbolic in the story because they represent those in a society that are likely to survive. There is a myth that cats have 9 lives. So readers can assume that the cat symbolizes young people. We could say young, able-bodied people who will be able to survive a conflict, period. All right. And then we could say the goats are known to symbolize sacrificial beings. The goat that the old man was caring for represents the elderly, disabled, and others who cannot escape a war zone. This could also include the soldiers that are drafted to fight in a conflict. Unlike civilians who are supposed to be given safety, soldiers are sent to the battlefields. I'm just being kind of descriptive here. This is how you could add some more explanation. So your body paragraphs, you're explaining. You don't need to focus on the summary of the story. Notice how I'm kind of talking. Now I'm going on. This might be going a little bit tangenty, but you see how I'm coming up with my own interpretation of what these goats, what they symbolize, how readers can interpret. And then finally, I will say, when the old man mentions his birds, he calls them pigeons. However, the narrator asks, let's find it. Did you leave the dove cage unlocked? Asks. However, the narrator asks, did you leave the dove cage unlocked? When, we'll just say towards the end of his conversation with the man. So we could say, by changing the name to, by changing the word choice, really, by changing the language, the pigeons take on a new symbolic meaning in the story. The narrator could be, the narrator is trying to assure the old man that if the dove cage is open, then maybe the birds will be okay, all right, and peace will arrive soon. Doves are symbolic of peace on an international scale. So those would be our symbols. And then we could finish this paragraph saying something like, readers can use the animals as a symbol to as a symbol for the victims of conflict and warfare. And then our final, Ernest Hemingway story, The Old Man at the Bridge, is mainly told through dialogue and factual descriptions. However, if the reader were to give meaning to the protagonist, antagonist, and animals mentioned, there is much deeper interpretations to be had. And then we could say the narrator and the cat, and the birds symbolize those in a nation who can survive a disaster or a conflict. However, the old man and goat are symbolic of those in a country who suffer the most during a collapse of peace or civil order. This is kind of going on more of a natural disaster situation and every person for themselves, but that in a summary you could sort of do that. But then I might want to end it really fast before I tangent. Wait, so I'll read it again. Ernest Hemingway's story, The Old Man at the Bridge, is mainly told through dialogue and factual descriptions. However, if the reader were to give meaning to the protagonist, antagonist, and animals mentioned, there are much deeper interpretations to be had. The narrator, the cat, and the bird symbolize those in a nation who can survive a disaster or a conflict. However, the old man and the goat are symbolic of those in a country who suffer the most during a collapse of peace or civil order. And then we could also maybe add, summarizing finally, Hemingway's use of symbolism in the story develops the central idea of, and you always want to go back and make sure you check what we are saying here for our thesis, war and forced displacement. All right, so we want to go back and say of uses symbolism in the story. Hemingway's use of symbolism in the story develops the central idea of war creating war creating havoc for civilian populations. And we want to make sure but develops the central idea of how war war creates havoc for civilian populations. And that would be a text only. We just read the story and used what the story gave us and interpreted our own symbols. And don't be afraid to interpret your own symbols because if you've heard of a symbol before, you could even give a little background. Well, you don't want to give too much of your own background, unlike the story or the author, if you're taking a test. But if it's a symbol like the white elephant, or maybe they taught it to you at school, if they taught it to you at school and you remember it, you can put it in your story or in your essay for text only. All right.